Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 6th episode of our 6-part series, Navigating the New Normal. So today we're actually covering the 2nd episode of a little mini 2-part series in our 6-week series. What happens next? Changes to contracting, risk management, and productivity. All right, so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Sprague, Senior Product Marketing Manager.
Thank you very much, Maggie. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. As Maggie mentioned, this is kind of part 2 of a 2-week mini-series within our 6-week series, which is Navigating the New Normal in Construction. So this week, we're going we're talking about what happens next, changes to contracting, risk management, and productivity. So last week's webinar, which by the way, we will provide links to all of the previous webinars at the end of this webinar and email that out to all registrants as well. But last week's webinar explored the challenges to expect when we start new or restart, or as some people had mentioned, refocus existing projects. This week, our presenters will hone in on some of the things we can focus on to mitigate some of those circumstances. So we're really excited to have 3 fantastic presenters. I'm going to do all the introductions right now so that when we move from presentation to presentation, I won't take up too much time in between. So first, we have Andrea Rutledge, who is the President and CEO of CMAA. Then we also have Barry LePatner, who is the owner of LePatner and Associates. And we have Mark Blumkin, who is the Managing Director, Infrastructure and Capital Projects at Deloitte. Not going in that order. Mark will kind of kick us off, followed by Andrea, and then bringing up the end will be Barry. So I'm gonna say goodbye now, and most of us will shut off our webcams, or Mark will stay on, or he'll shut his off as well, and we'll look forward to hearing what he has to say.
Thanks, Matt. Well, I'll keep my camera on so you can see my ugly mug while I'm speaking, but appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all today. Hope everyone's doing well and stabilizing in kind of week 9 or 10 or 8 or wherever we are in this work from home situation. It's been strange, but I think we're all getting used to it. And for one, I know I'm anxious to get back into an office. However, I am enjoying not commuting to the city of Manhattan every day. So for that, I'm grateful that myself and my family are healthy. So good news. So I'm going to talk to you today about a few things. First, let me give a little background on myself. A little about me. I'm a civil engineer, been in the construction industry over 30 years of my career, primarily advising owners on their capital projects, their capital programs, their processes on how they plan, execute, deliver capital projects. And my work has been on all types of projects, infrastructure, buildings, and all those kind of projects. And you can see I've worked in strategic planning and project delivery, litigation support, forensic investigations. So that's kind of my background. I've been at Deloitte for about 18 years. I was with another Big 4 firm for 14 years before that. So that is me. A little about the practice I'm in at Deloitte. We work with our clients across the life cycle, and we like to think of our services as providing confidence to our clients, and that takes the form of investment confidence, where we work with clients to figure out how they fund and finance their capital projects or package them to make sure they're financeable. We move then to delivery confidence, where we help clients determine what the best delivery strategy is for their projects, whether it's a contracting strategy or procurement strategy or internal organization and processes on how to deliver a project. And then moving on to cost and schedule confidence, really is the bread and butter of what we do, helping clients deliver their projects on time, on budget, make sure the cost and schedule are under control, and there's transparency and accountability and governance in those projects. And finally, enabling digital capital projects across the life cycle. So we've done a lot of investment on how to report and monitor projects through digital means across capital projects. So that's a little bit about Deloitte and my practice and kind of what we do. So what I'm going to cover here briefly in my comments are sort of the status of construction by state, which sort of is changing almost every week. Some of the contracting concerns and opportunities that we see because of the COVID-19 situation, and then the scheduling impacts that we anticipate because of the new normal that we're going to be living with. Further, some technology strategies that we think are going to be accelerated by this situation, and then finally talk about costs. So let's move forward. So a map of the country here, the colors got washed out a little on the white, but you can see in the red are states that have been where construction is not essential. And as I said before, these are changing. So I know in Michigan this week they opened up construction. New York and New Jersey, same thing. They've started to call construction as essential. For a while, there was non-essential categorization, and but there were exceptions across the country. Pennsylvania had some restrictions as well as Florida. So it's starting to open up around the country, and I'm sure I'm telling you folks what you've seen, but things are starting to open back up again. However, with restrictions on social distancing, on PPE, how people work together. So, we think there's going to be a lot of impacts on productivity and how projects get delivered in the next several months and maybe even years. So in terms of contracting, that we think there are sort of three areas that are going to be affected: the people, the business, and the projects. So health and safety challenges are going to be are going to force the industry into a new normal when it comes to contracting. So in terms of the people side of the business, there are going to be labor requirements that are going to change. There'll be work rules that are going to be different than today. So keeping social distance, wearing masks, and keeping keeping space between workers are going to affect productivity. We also think there's going to be more flexible, more competitive overhead as project management software and tools allow the office staff to be a little more competitive and a little more mobile like they are today. On the business side, we think there's going to be some a move towards alternative project delivery. Because the states, and at least on the public side, as well as on the commercial side, there's going to be a bigger push towards alternative project delivery. And we mean public-private partnerships, design build, anything that gets the projects done faster or brings in third-party capital so projects get delivered without the owner having to dip into their pockets as much because they're going to be as constrained as possible. We also expect increased M&A activity due to some of the weakness in contractors and subcontractors that have been affected by this work shutdown. So we think there's going to be firms that get bigger, and there's going to be a lot of consolidations in the industry, and I think you'll hear Barry talk about that more in his speech. And then in terms of the project, there are going to be increased safety requirements. There's going to be, we think, a push to more prefab versus on-site. We expect to see technological advancements such as faster steel erection, and we think owners are going to have flexible design options that they're going to have to consider. Just a quick story. I saw in terms of the technology, I saw a video yesterday of a fully automated backhoe and spreader, basically building a foundation of one of the wind towers, which was fully automated without a body in any machine, fully using GPS technology. So I think we're going to see more of those innovations going forward. As we all know, the construction industry has been a bit of a laggard in, adopting some of these innovations. I think this situation may be accelerating that trend, but we'll see. We'll see how the industry adopts some of those technologies. And I'm going to talk about more of that in a little while. So I did mention contractor financial viability, and we thought it would be helpful to look back in the 08, 09 financial crisis to see kind of what happened. And you can see that both in construction employees and the number of firms decreased pretty dramatically with a long road back to recovery, almost 8 to 10 years to get back to where they were before the financial crisis back in 08. Our economists from our firm and what I've been reading predict an even maybe longer or steeper curve back to normal after this situation. So, from an owner's perspective, and in a CM or contractor's perspective, analyzing and doing the due diligence on the contractors that they hire is going to be important. Looking at things like liquidity and cash on hand and the current projects that are on the contractor's plate, the workforce size, the longevity of the firm, the quality of the bond language is all going to be really important to do the due diligence when signing contracts and moving forward with either construction management contractors or subcontractors. So the firms that were able to survive back in the last financial crisis were ones that really had a strong balance sheet and a revenue growth model. So be aware and make sure you're signing contracts with viable contractors, both from a owner's perspective and a contractor's perspective. Next, I'm going to touch on what we anticipate scheduling impacts to be in the COVID-19 era. We do think that there's going to be some impacts in 3 categories here: material delays, workforce productivity, and alternating shifts. So we expect that there will be supply chain impacts and material that comes from overseas, or even material that comes from the US, that's going to impact supplies being delivered. Manufacturing is going to be slow to rebound. So we think there's going to be some delays and impacts to materials that come to construction sites. So something to be aware of. We think productivity is also going to be impacted. As I said before, the social distancing requirements are going to limit the productivity of some subcontractors, some trades. Wiping down materials is going to slow down. So, the productivity will be impacted, and that's going to be something to be aware of. And shift work, this could be a way to alleviate some of the social distance requirements, so to moderate the shift work. So from an owner and construction manager perspective, it's really going to be important to communicate closely and collaborate with the contractors and subcontractors on the new schedule that gets prepared in the recovery mode. That everyone sort of understands the new durations, the logic in the schedule, and that the contractors and subcontractors have adequate durations and logic to maintain their milestones, which may have to shift. Which is also going to result, we think, in an active risk management program. So every owner, every CM really is going to have to manage the risks even more closely than they do today. We think that's a very important consideration going forward. So schedule is going to be tricky, and more effective monitoring of the schedule is going to be required. Turning to technology. Here we go. Oh, sorry, I advanced one too many. So I mentioned innovation and technology, and hoping that this situation accelerates the push towards digitization, innovation, and we've laid out a few of those technologies and innovations here. So things like robots and drone inspections and BIM, further use of BIM and digital twins on projects, enabling remote management, we think, is important. And modularization, not an easy word to say. But these are all innovations that we've been talking about for years. You know, hopefully these things will accelerate construction and be adopted more thoroughly throughout the industry. I'm happy to talk more about that on the Q&A sessions. And then finally, looking at the sort of the timeline and the productivity. Everyone loves a 2x2 slide here. So if you look at the highest impact or the highest impact in productivity and the timeline it takes to implement those things like robotics and 3D printing have a high impact on productivity, but are going to be longer term to implement. And things like BIM, we've already seen a lot of use of BIM, so that should be we should see more of that in the short term, as well as an impact on the increased productivity. And then on the negative side, you can see some of the items below, like labor availability and workforce diversity. So these are just some impacts of productivity, the horizon over the next few years, and where we think things are gonna turn out. So with that, I think that's the last one of my slides. Happy to take questions. Matt, I'll turn it back to you, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak today.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mark. That was fantastic. We're going to hold off all questions just to the end. We want to make sure that all of our presenters have the opportunity to get all of their information and then leave enough time for questions. So before I hand it over to Andrea, I'm going to take just 15 seconds. I sent a quick chat as well to remind everybody, feel free to don't hold your questions to the end. We want to make sure that we get them into the questions area so that we can kind of filter through them and combine ones that are similar and be able to get those questions answered by our three presenters at the end. So with that, I will go away again and I hand it over to Andrea from CMAA.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Matt. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon for those of you who are in a place where it is currently the afternoon, and good morning otherwise. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I want to thank Trimble and eBuilder for the invitation to join you today. I'm Andrea Rutledge. I am the President and CEO of the Construction Management Association of America. This is our vision. This is our mission. And we have a number of ways that we deliver on this. There are a couple of things that I want to talk about that both Mark has introduced and Barry's going to talk about in greater detail later. And they have to do, from CMAA's perspective, they go back to something that we did just about a year, 15 months ago. So in March 2019, we convened a small group of leaders within the profession and within the industry to talk about not only sort of where the industry had been and how it had progressed from the last time we had a Future Focus event, which was in 2012, but where it was today and where it might be going. We called it Future Focus. A number of key elements emerged from that particular conference and that particular conversation, which really set the direction for us in terms of how we as an association prepare to respond to the needs of our members. And our members cut across the industry. You know, they are owners, contractors, engineers, architects, former craftspersons, attorneys, others who are engaged in the professional practice of construction management. About 70% of our members work for service providers, and about 30% of them work for owners, like airlines and healthcare systems and state departments of transportation. So 3 things really emerged as aspirations for the profession. And I'm going backwards so that I can bring us forward. The importance of diversity and inclusion in teams, the importance of a qualified workforce, and the use of innovation and technology to advance projects and programs forward. One of the things that became very, very clear in this conversation was that workforce development and diversity and inclusion were inextricably linked one to the other. That we grow our workforce by making it a more diverse and inclusive workforce. We improve our conversation and our ability to solve problems by bringing in multiple perspectives, multiple experiences. This really changed for CMAA how we think about recruiting, how we ask our members to think about workforce development. And one of the things that we've come to notice in this particular area is that firms that are really ready to take this on and to make a significant commitment to diversity and inclusion are also putting someone in the C-suite whose job it is to develop practices, programs, and policies for diversity and inclusion in the workforce. This makes this person, this allows this topic to work across the organization rather than being not necessarily isolated, but certainly compressed in, say, HR or talent development. Technology. We're here at the invitation of a technology company, so I think that's really important to acknowledge. But I also think it's important to remember that, as one of the participants in this conversation last year said, technology can really choke a company when you look at it company-wide. And part of our job as CMs is to talk about technology as a tool in terms of balancing the needs of the project with the needs of the owner, with the needs of the moment. And I think we're all pretty committed to that understanding of technology and our ability to use it and think about it and make choices about it. What I think is really important about technology, and we'll come back to this in a minute, is that there are other people kind of outside the inner ring of owner, client, contractor, CM, engineers, et cetera, who are not as well versed in the use of technology and who are not as prepared as others might be to use it in their day-to-day. And what's really important about this is that these folks who function on this next ring are really, really important to the success of any project. But it's up to us to some extent to kind of either push them along or bring them along in some of the ways that that Mark has talked about and that I think Barry will talk about later. Intellectual capital. This is really where it all comes together. Managing intellectual capital and the people involved in developing the intellectual capital that exists within your firms and organizations is the most pressing issue the profession will face in the next 5 years. And this is about developing the skills that are going to be needed by everyone on your teams to do the kinds of things and to make the kinds of decisions that that Mark and Barry are talking about. How are people going to make choices between not always entirely attractive alternatives about a schedule or a contract or risk or estimating or sequencing? How do we develop our skill set and the skill set of our team members to be able to make these difficult and sometimes simple, but sometimes not so simple choices? So I really think that there are 3 things. Technology is a tool. It's a really, really important tool. We can't function in our world today without it. Project leaders need to be able to choose the right technology for the job, so they need the analytical and quantitative skills to decide this one versus that one for this project versus that project. And offices and teams outside the project team, as I said, are often not as prepared to use technology as the project team. And I think one of the first examples of this, particularly in vertical construction, is the permitting office. The local permitting office is a really paper-dependent kind of place unless you have a really sophisticated and advanced permitting office. They still want to see a stack of documents in order to issue the permits to move forward. So what is it? I'm not saying that we have to solve this problem for them. I'm saying, how do we use technology, understanding that some members of the team, some members of the universe of people that you deal with aren't as prepared as you are to use technology the same way that you use it. One of the other things that came out very clearly in Future Focus, but I think continues to be really, really important in all of this, especially as we think about what comes next, is that this is a people business. This is a human relationship business. It does rely very heavily on technical skill, but at the end of the day, what really matters ultimately is the nature of the relationships and your ability and your team's abilities to foster and develop those relationships. And so that's where this group of skills becomes really, really important. Critical thinking, communication, decision-making, qualitative and quantitative reasoning, research, and leadership. And finally, that really brings us back to CMAA and to what our real bread and butter is as an organization, which is professional development. And so in addition to thinking about how you are going to adjust how you manage projects and programs from a technical perspective, I think it's equally important to think about how you will manage the professional development of the people in your organizations and on your teams from an intellectual capital perspective. So very briefly, I want to talk very simply about what CMAA, and I'll be honest, other professional societies offer this as well. But CMAA offers it in the way is our professional education is for the professional construction manager and those emerging and developing in the profession. So within our professional development universe, we offer an extremely large list and inventory of programs and products. We have our standards of practice. We have a leadership library program. Focus 2.0 is the education content from our spring meeting that we unfortunately had to cancel because of the COVID-19 crisis. We have a number of on-demand webinars. We're offering live webinars. We have conference sessions from previous years. So if you can't remember exactly what that session was that you went to back in Orlando, you can probably find it on our website.
Yeah, so she's doing.
We also have exam prep tools and in-person education. Finally, I want to talk about certification and certificates. I believe that certification is one of the best ways that you can demonstrate to your clients and to your teams your commitment to using best practices and to your continued professional development. So we have the CCM. You can learn more about that on our website. Owners believe in it. Owners recognize it. We have owners who are certified. I actually think it's one of the best ways for owners and service providers together to come to a common understanding and common vocabulary if you are both using the language of a certified profession. And finally, we have our certificates, the Construction Manager in Training and the CMIT Level 2, which are for young professionals emerging and out of school and growing in their professional lives as members of your firms and organizations and teams. So that's a little bit about what CMAA does and what I think we can offer you. But mostly, I don't ask you to just come to us. I ask you to think about technology as a tool, investing in human capital, and what does it take to ensure that your relationship business remains a relationship-based business. With that, I'll turn it back over to Matt and to the other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. I really appreciate it. And again, once again, we're going to be holding the questions until the end. We've got one more presenter. Barry LePatner is going to be joining us momentarily. And he'll be able to go through his. We've already had some really great questions come through, so feel free to keep them coming. Keep me busy while everybody's presenting.
Good afternoon. I'm Barry LePatner, and I have the wonderful privilege to be speaking here at the Trimble webinar, which I think has done a wonderful service for everybody in the AEC world, architects, engineers, construction, and also for owners. And I want to discuss all those perspectives this afternoon and to talk about how we are going to address, as an industry, the real tangible long-term and short-term impacts of the COVID-19 virus pandemic, which in my opinion is going to change enormously the way in which we design and build and finance projects going forward. And these are going to be considerable impacts, because I fully expect that the years ahead are going to see an electrifying series of disruptive changes. And in fact, I think the AEC industry is going to be experiencing more changes in the way it operates in the next 5 years than it has in the past 75 years. And I'm going to talk about that. Let's focus on the immediacy of what's happened as a result of the coronavirus situation strangling our nation, and especially real estate and construction world. This past April, just weeks ago, we saw job losses of 975,000 in the construction workforce. These losses were far and away the worst one-month drop ever. And in the AE world, for design professionals, the losses totaled 85,000. You can expect that there are going to be more losses in the month of May when we get to calculate the residuum of the last few weeks. And you could describe our nation's economy, and that carries over to every aspect of the real estate design and construction world. You can say that our economy is really, in the words of the economist Paul Krugman, in a medically induced coma, because whole sectors of our nation are largely shut down due to the pandemic. And to put those losses of nearly 1 million construction workers in perspective, we need to remember that following the 2008 Great Recession, the construction industry lost 1.5 million workers after 2008. And as late as 2017, 9 years later, nearly 500,000 of those workers had not returned to the industry. The result of that was we left a notable shortage in the amount of skilled workers, which still today plagues the industry. And as a result of the impact of one of the impacts of the COVID-19 virus crisis, we're going to see more workers leaving the industry, and a substantial question as to how, once we resume the building boom that I'm going to talk about that was going to follow, whether we're ever going to find sufficient skilled workers to build our economy, build our environment, and come back to a place where construction once again is 5 or 6% of our GDP. Let me talk about our industry and what's really happened and what's going to happen in the near-term future. And by that, I mean over the next year and a half. I believe most of the players in the industry have yet to fully grasp that there are going to be tens of thousands of small mom and pop subs, suppliers, vendors, and manufacturers, both domestically as well as overseas, who are going to go out of business. And most of that's going to happen by the time this year is over. Replacing the supply chain, which is so necessary for construction to flow smoothly, is going to be impeded until new players come onto the scene, start new businesses that can successfully handle the financial aspects of being in business, and to bring back from overseas domestic manufacturers, which were doing so well in Southeast Asia and other parts of the world, because America was ordering products overseas at a much lesser price than it cost to be done here in America. We're going to bring that business back to America, but it's not going to take anything less than 2 years for that capital to be invested and for these businesses to be operational. And at the end of that process, we're going to have greater costs for owners in the costs of new projects. Now, I mentioned how many small subcontractors, suppliers, vendors are going to go out of business. What this is going to mean is that construction managers and general contractors will need to undertake greater due diligence in how they hire these replacements to fill the jobs for the work that's going to come along. That due diligence is going to take time. That due diligence is going to take costs. But it's going to be necessary because when businesses go out of business, those who remain financially viable are going to be sorely tested to prove that they remain financially viable. And many of them are still going to have to struggle with their finances in order to be bondable, in order to get insurance, and in order to meet their current lease, mortgage, or payroll obligations as small businesses have to do. We're going to be tested by that, and it's going to be a substantial question as to how the industry is going to respond to these challenges. One of the bigger problems we have, and Mark was mentioning that a little while ago, is that the industry is not a real great adapter of new technologies. And the sad story is that as I call around across the nation to architects, engineers, and contractors, the industry is not using this time period to make a wholesale, much needed conversion to the technologies that are going to lead to greater efficiencies in the design construction process. A number of years ago, I wrote the book, Broken Buildings, Busted Budgets, which was the first industry study of the inefficiency of our design and construction process and how owners pay a huge price for those inefficiencies. Well, unless we can get an overwhelming shift by the industry to adopt new technology that will bring needed improvements to overcome historically low profitability and low productivity in the industry, we're going to have a difficult time when, as I will mention again, the boom is going to pick up where this COVID virus ends. And unless we see that conversion, we're going to have a great deal of difficulty also in putting the teams together that are going to make for these efficiencies that we need going forward. One other aspect about this, as a result of what we're going to see in the people who are going to go out of business and those who will still remain, it is clear to me that the big, meaning the bigger firms, both on the AE side and on the construction side, are going to get bigger. There's going to be consolidations, and there's going to be resourcing of capitals to make those firms bigger, stronger, more global than ever before. But those who remain mired to using 2D designs and continue to use paper plans and specifications in the field instead of digital plans that are available on their tablets are going to become dinosaurs, and they're going to slow down future projects to where owners are not going to rush to use them. And for the AEC world to emerge out of this pandemic, we're going to have to see bigger and more well-capitalized firms. They are going to continue to thrive. They will have more resources to pay for more experienced workers, to expand the use of more efficient and profitable technology, and to take on more projects around the country than ever before. It is the mid-sized and the smaller AEC firms that are going to find themselves facing greater competition than ever before. Just like in the last recession, where the larger firms decided that in order to keep cash flow going, in order to keep their employees working, they started to go after smaller projects like schools that they never would touch in good times. This is going to be greater competition and be more difficult for mid-sized and smaller firms to find a foothold in the next 2 years and 3 years until the economy picks up and business as usual, or as will be the new normal, commences. We're going to see major quality of life issues for project safety arising from new COVID-19 rules and regulations. From owner standpoint, this is going to add considerable cost to each new project because there's going to be new distancing rules for workers, and it's going to result in a clear loss of efficiency, and it's going to impose serious time constraints that are going to see project completion dates extended by 50 to 100%. This is something that's unimaginable in the last few years, but it's going to be something we're going to have to address if we're going to deal with the health considerations that are arising from what all of the specialists and the health consultants are telling us is necessary to avoid rebirths of the virus in the months and years to come. In addition, we're going to see more costly constraints arising from how lenders, bonding companies, and insurers are going to look at future construction projects. Clearly, we're already seeing from signs that lenders are holding back and trying to understand what the future of construction is going to look like and how insurable it's going to be. But those new constraints are going to additionally cause owners to face much higher costs at the end than they are in the last few years. And finally, we're going to expect that owners are going to adopt new risk-sharing methods with contractors and the AE world at large. By sharing those risks, by identifying all of these other factors, it's going to open up opportunities for architects, engineers, and contractors to negotiate incentives and bonuses at the end of projects if they're able to meet the owner's goals and objectives in a timely fashion and find ways to be more efficient, which is another reason why technology is going to place a higher imperative on the AEC community. Everybody should know about a 2018 McKinsey & Company study of very large-scale projects, which showed that 98% of all those large projects go 30% or more over budget and incur delays of 1 to 2 years. Smaller projects, smaller meaning $150 million, $80 million, $60 million projects, still routinely go 10, 20, and 30% over budget. And anybody who wants to question that, do a Google alert, put in construction cost overruns, and watch what you see every day coming to you as you reveal how frequent it is that projects of all sizes and all types do face large cost overruns and delays. In order to obviate that, owners are going to be demanding that team members employ BIM, Building Information Modeling, as the basis for the design and construction of their projects. This will enable the teams to design complete and coordinated design documents that will enable a fully detailed model for owners to secure a fixed price for all elements of the design. And the reason we'll be able to get a fixed price using a fully complete and coordinated set of design documents is there's no unknowns, or there will be minimal unknowns for there to be unwarranted change orders, delays, and claims arising in the field. And highly sophisticated firms are also going to arise. Boutiques, if you want to call them that, are going to come up both from the design professional world as well as from the construction world. And you're going to see those firms now specialize in forward-thinking environmentally oriented projects. You're going to see modular housing projects move significantly upward as a percentage of construction. And we're going to see that those firms that don't have some capacity to provide these special services, those jack of all trades, medium and large size firms, are going to be less in demand for the special value added projects that I'm talking about. Now let's turn to some good news. While we must accept the fact that the COVID-19 disruptions I have identified will carry forward through 2021, let's look to 2022 and the next 35 years. Because it is during this period of time that our nation is going to enter into a $35 trillion building boom. That's going to go till 2050. And the boom will respond to the growing needs of our population that will grow to nearly 400 million, and the need to rebuild most of our aging infrastructure, certainly by 2040 the latest, and possibly carrying over into new areas of development in 2050. This new growth, which is already recognized by the US Census Bureau, is going to see new cities developed in the South and the Southwest. Existing cities are going to continue to lose some of their density to suburban and rural areas, and Gen Xers and millennials are going to realize maybe the city isn't the best place for us to operate. Technology is going to sprout up outside many, many cities, and the quality of life of those new areas are going to be very attractive to many. Where does this leave us? Now is the time for the smartest members of the design professionals, for the owners who want to remain or become leaders in their fields, and for principals of construction firms to recognize that their mutual interests must be acknowledged and strengthened for the benefit of all. If we use these COVID times to go into our silos, start seeking our own individual area by area segment of need, and don't recognize that there's a combination of talents, energies, capital that must come together to work for the benefit of projects, we're going to miss opportunities. We're going to delay the onset of the building boom, and we're going to find that this pandemic is going to stretch out the recovery time more than is warranted. That is the challenge, but it is also should be the objective and the goal of everyone in the real estate, design, and construction communities. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. I invite Mark and Andrea to come back on and share their webcams, and we can go through, probably have enough time for a handful of questions. I'm going to pose the question, and really at this point we'll kind of take this as a panel discussion. If you one of you want to raise your hand in terms of who wants to answer it first, but let me go through the question first. So I appreciate the person who submitted this question. I'm going to take no credit for it because the way that he wrote it was actually really well. It's going to make me sound really smart, so I appreciate that. So what kind of bidding climate can we anticipate in the near future? Which of the following scenarios can we expect? Told you, it's very detailed. Delays in project completions, liquidity crisis, and unsettled disputes with owners may leave contractors and subcontractors cash-strapped and held up on their current projects. So basically, less bidders and high margins. Or the second option, lack of new jobs in the market, resulting in increased number of contractors and subcontractors looking for work. So therefore, more bidders and lower margins. It was a mouthful. I'll lay it out there. Who wants to snag it first? Mark?
I can start. I mean, it could go either way, really. If you look at, after the 2007-8 financial crisis, I think owners got the benefit of a very competitive bidding climate. So, I worked with several owners at that time that got bids that were way lower than their budgets, and got the benefit of a market that was very hungry for work. This This one is a little different. I think, this work stoppage is going to, result, like Barry and said, there's going to be a lot of companies that do go out of business and consolidate. So, there could be less firms bidding for work. But on the other hand, because of the constrained budgets, a lot of owners, there may be less projects that hit the street. So, giving you both sides of the coin. I'll let you guys respond.
Barry?
Well, Mark said it could be either or. My answer is it could be both.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. What we're not factoring in is that from 2008 onward, we saw the growth of a lot of nimble firms. There are firms today, both on the construction side and the design side, that were not very well known back then, and today have become very strong in their respective fields. Nimble use of technology and smartly communicating how to get from point A to point B is what owners are going to be looking for. And if there's less resources from owners, they're certainly going to be looking for efficiency and productivity in the design and construction process. Those firms that know how to do that are going to step into the shoes of a lot of good business.
So I would just add, if I could, so I agree it's a both and circumstance. And I think that the deciding factor is gonna be somewhere, in the process of opening and selecting bids. I think that one of the things that's going to define the successful project team is the project team that can demonstrate its ability to pivot, so that when, let's just make it up, it's a hospital in central Wisconsin. So yeah, so we're building hospitals in central Wisconsin right now, but let's say we get halfway or a third of the way into that project and Wisconsin has to shut down again to flatten the curve. And so it's the firm that can respond to that can essentially renegotiate quickly the terms with their owner to adjust to whatever that pivot or whatever those additional adjustments might be to keep that project still going, even though it may be on a different schedule, different whatever.
Excellent. Thanks to all three of you. All three of you within your presentations mentioned the use of technology as being important towards productivity moving forward. And I guess it would also go into the continuing to be nimble through what lies ahead in the future. But one of the questions that came in had to do with the cost of that technology and how someone, is that something that can just be put into a change order, or how can people can go into dealing with that I don't want to say unexpected costs, but new costs too. And I think this was originally spurred on by the automated backhoe example.
Yeah, so I'll start and then I'll let the experts finish up. I mean, I admit, and I think we all agree, it's illegal to print your own money. And so investments in technology, I mean, associations deal with this exact same question on a pretty regular basis. What's the right technology? What's the right time for technology? When is it right to go from the one you have to the one you think you need next? These are really, really hard questions, and it takes me back to my earlier comment about the ability to weigh all of the factors, none of which resolve to an ideal solution, but will advance you as a firm on your objectives. So in CMAA, everyone's tired of hearing me say it, what's our objective? So if we focus more importantly on what's our objective, what's the problem we're attempting to solve, then it becomes not easy, but certainly more straightforward to make these decisions about when and how much and in what order.
Well, let me just say a few things. As I travel around the country and speak to groups of owners, architects, engineers, construction world, what we see is two divergent worlds. There is the world of those who are 50 and 55 and older, and there's the world of younger people who have grown up with technology being a comfortable fit in their hands, in front of them, or working the keyboards on sophisticated programs. These years ahead are the greatest opportunity for that younger generation to take hold of an old, outdated industry, to see what they see from the old mentors and adapt technologies that will cut through a lot of the ways that have been accepted norms. And if that younger generation accepts the challenge, we're going to speed up the revisions that are much needed on productivity and efficiency in this industry. It's going to make a big change for those companies that let them take the lead. And it's going to be a big change for the owners who are going to be looking more and more to those 45-year-olds instead of the white-haired 65-year-olds. So keep your eye out for those companies that are being led more by the younger generation, and you're going to see the answer to that question.
Well said. I don't want to take away from everyone's time, so I think you guys summarized it well.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you very much. Actually, a couple questions came in about already wanting a recording of this session and getting the slides. So there's a lot of information that I think that people need, maybe even a second pass through to digest. And the same has been true with all 6 of the webinars in this series. So as you can see from the slide here, and we're adding in to the chat right now, links specifically, a link for contractors and a link for owners. To be able to go in and access the webinars accordingly. Obviously, this live webinar is being recorded, and then it'll be edited and packaged probably within the next 48 hours, but this page here will be where that lives. And wanted to make sure that I got that out there before people logged off. And one plug that I will put in for Trimble here as we start talking about the technology and the cost of technology. One of the things that Trimble is looking into is kind of taking that software as a service model and putting it into a hardware as a service model that kind of lowers that barrier of entry into some of those larger pieces of technology on hardware to be able to utilize that. So look for or speak to your representative in Trimble. So, all right, that's the only commercial, I promise. So I want to thank our presenters again, Andrea, Barry, and Mark. Absolutely fantastic. The work you put in this week is greatly appreciated. I want to thank you all very much, and I want to thank everybody who attended this webinar and any of the 6. We've really enjoyed putting these on, and we've loved hearing the feedback, and we hope that everybody comes back and watches them a second or third time. Thank you all very much. Absolutely.
Thank
Have
you.
a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.